That's the HR chief guy. You're right. Yeah, you know, so just unmute and read your people.
You ready to start? All right. I'm going to call the Thursday, April 27th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. We have one person on Zoom from HRG, which is one of our topics this evening. We need to approve the minutes from the March 23rd meeting. So they were in our packet. If there are no corrections or additions, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve those minutes. Need a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes for March 23rd, 2023, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the open forum section. This is for topics that are on the agenda. Is there anyone desiring to speak?
Is this the only chance?
No, there's one hand.
All right.
This is about agenda items. Is what you want to talk about an agenda item?
Yes, since the comment period is on the agenda, it is therefore an agenda item. This comment period was,
What's on the agenda item? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
the comment period is on the agenda.
The comment period is for items that are on the agenda.
The Saldo
Yes.
applications.
Is that what you want to speak about?
Yes,
Okay.
yep, I'm speaking about the agenda. So, this comment period is held when me and everybody else in the public basically has not seen anything that's up for discussion. So it's very difficult to provide any kind of a comment that might be worth anybody's time. In the rules for the meeting, it says, prior to taking official action, reasonable opportunity for residents to make comments will be provided. I would like to submit respectfully that that reasonable opportunity should probably be after things have been presented and not at the beginning when nobody really has any idea what's going on anyway.
You have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to do exactly that.
It states a reasonable opportunity for residents to make comments prior to any official action being taken.
Well, these rules and regulations came from the supervisors. So I would suggest that you take it up with the supervisors. Because they're the ones that sent this down to us to enforce.
I'll do that, but respectfully, sir, you are presiding over the meeting, and you have a great deal of discretion in these matters. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to our first subdivision land development application, which is from the Northwestern Chester County Municipal Authority. And I believe Jason's on Zoom to represent the authority. So Jen, do you want to start? Or?
Sure. Jason, if you just want to give a brief overview of what the sewer authority is planning to do out there, you can probably describe it quicker and better than I can.
Sure. So yeah, the Northwestern Chester County Municipal Authority is proposing upgrades to the existing wastewater treatment plant. These upgrades are being dictated by some, recent Act 537 planning that determines some electrification upgrades are required at the plant. The upgrades generally involve the installation of a new blower slash electrical building, a new gravel driveway. They're demolishing one of the tertiary lagoons on the site. There's 5 lagoons on the site, so they're demolishing one of them. And then within the area of that demolished lagoon, they're installing a new moving bed biofilm reactor tank. And then they are also installing some new aeration lines within the existing aeration lagoons on the site. And the NCCMA is looking for potential waiver from Chapter 22, the land development approval process for the township. This is being requested due to the fact that these are all accessory uses to the existing principal use on the site, which, based upon how the ordinance reads, appears to be exempt from land development approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the project. We are planning on submitting a stormwater management plan to the township for review by their engineer, and we will also be requiring an NPS permit that we are going to be submitting to the Conservation District as well.
So ultimately, the township Saldo, the way it's been interpreted historically, is any new non-residential building, regardless of whether it's accessory or not, needs to do land development. A lot of times we find when they're minor projects like this with limited impact, the township has considered land development waivers before. So since they're doing a stormwater plan to address the new impervious cover, and given the nature of the project, our office doesn't have any objections to the waiver request. It's up to you guys. Give a recommendation to the board if you feel a waiver land development is justified.
So how do we feel about that? Do we have any issues with waiving the requirement to the sewer authority? Okay, somebody want to make a motion to recommend to the supervisors that we recommend to them that they would approve waiving the land development process?
I'll make the motion. I'll second.
Any questions or comments before we do a voice vote? All in favor of recommending waiving that requirement, signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
All right, Jason, that'll move to the board meeting on May 10th for their formal approval.
8:10, okay.
Yeah.
Will there be an opportunity to attend that virtually as well?
Yes, I believe they do that one virtually as well. So we'll make sure you get the link.
Perfect.
All
All
right.
right, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No problem, thanks.
Our second item under subdivision land development is a submission from the Calvary Chapel of Honeybrook, and I don't believe there's anyone here representing them.
Yeah, we talked to their engineer, Timber Tech, this week regarding their review letter. Ultimately, that project is the existing Cambridge scale building there at the corner of Todd and 322. The building itself, for the most part, is going to stay the same. They're going to add like a portico drop-off area towards the rear. But they are taking some land from the adjacent Ivan Stolt and Anna Stoltzfus's property to create a parking area. They're proposing stormwater management. They are planning to leave the solar array that is there now. So they have a lot of review comments to work through, but one of the questions that they had when I had discussions with their engineer is currently the plan shows them closing off the existing access to 322 and solely taking access off of Todd. They've not done a traffic study yet. But they wanted to know whether the township has any desire, thoughts, recommendations on whether they should keep some form of access on 322, assuming it would be approved by PennDOT. You know, such as maybe a right-in, right-out, just to kind of keep traffic moving and not put everything on Todd. So I just wanted to bring that before the planning commission, see if you had any feedback. I can pass it on to their engineer, and then they can move forward with discussions. And have a traffic consultant do the traffic study and talk to PennDOT.
Todd was the township or not state road, right?
Correct, Todd is township. So it's just a matter, if you had a right in, right out there, then it would,
Are they changing the location of it?
of the access.
Yeah. If
Right.
they kept it on 322, would they be changing it? Because
Well,
they have parking there now?
You probably want to eliminate 322, so don't go to PennDOT.
Yeah, I think they would still need to talk to them, because they're still do work in the right of way to remove it and need utility lines there, but, I don't know if it would have to, if PennDOT would make them shift it over at all. They would need, it's slightly on Rick Marr's little triangular piece there in the front, so they would need to get a formal access easement for that, you know, maybe adjust it, but if they did a right in, right out, then that would reduce or eliminate the turning movement for anybody that is coming from 322 to make a right onto Todd and then a left into the church. And reduce the number of vehicles that would be leaving, coming down Todd to turn right onto 322, which would just reduce, you know, backups there for cars that want to come down Todd and turn left onto 322.
This isn't a site angle problem, right?
It what?
This isn't the site triangle problem that you have, it's pretty open all through there.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's just a consideration if you want all the traffic solely on Todd, or if you want to provide an additional, you know, relief point there.
It's probably not, it's probably okay. Most of their traffic's gonna be off-peak. And I would imagine typically during the week, they're not gonna have anybody coming out through there. It's really gonna be driven by PennDOT, whether they're gonna let them have that access, and whether it's gonna be restricted to right in or right out. I don't have a problem with it.
If they eliminate it, you don't have a problem if they eliminate it, or?
I don't have a problem either way.
Okay.
I think PennDOT's gonna drive whether it's gonna do that or not.
And possibly, they may want to check the fire department if they want them to have a second access point. Yeah. Any other
Does everybody else feel
comments on that with regards to access?
I don't know if you
That's fine, they're gonna revise the plans, provide more of a clear land development set, what's going on, go through Mike's letter that you need, Mike noted that you need zoning relief for the floodplain soils down in the solar right area. So they need some zoning relief to do the improvements that they're looking at there, so you may likely see a zoning hearing application before we get a formal land development plan coming to appear for full discussion.
Yeah, looking at their review letter, they got a little bit of work to do.
They do. And our recommendation was that they need to do the zoning relief, but when they compile their plan set is to have a sit-down meeting with us to go through things before they resubmit to make sure that they're on the right track. So, yeah, there's no action items with that. If you guys had any other comments, just if you looked at it at all that you want to pass on to their engineer, I can pass them on, but we just went over the review letter in detail this week.
There's two things mentioned in the letter that they're looking at some point from the planning commission, and that is landscaping, and also whether we would consider this as a minor subdivision. I guess we can make that decision when we see a more substantial plan. Or we
Yeah.
can make that decision tonight.
So if you were to consider land development comes down to if they need a traffic study, but because this is a church use, zoning requires a traffic study regardless. The other key component in that is landscaping either being at the PC's discretion under a minor land development and a major land development, they need to show compliance with the full landscaping criteria in the Saldo. I think major usually requires separate preliminary and final plan approvals, minor lets it be all in one. So, I mean, it's a fairly straightforward project with using the existing building and everything. I don't know if you guys have a preference of whether you would consider the major or minor land development, but they're the key ordinance sections that usually come into play.
Can we wait to see if they're gonna end up having to go through zoning for
Yeah.
zoning relief?
Yeah, and then I can let you guys know what other sections and requirements would be impacted between the difference between major and minor, so you can make a decision on that.
So we okay with waiting until we get some more information before we make a decision?
I'll get that to you guys.
All right. No zoning hearing or conditional use applications in front of us, so the only thing we have left is other business, which is some discussion on the Saldo amendments. This is, we don't have to take action on this evening. The goal was to take action at the May meeting. And we can share our comments with Jen, and she can take them back to the supervisors and who worked on this.
I think Beth did a lot of the rec and open space section, I believe came from Steve Landis. And then Beth and Mike were more involved than I was. So if you guys do have specific questions or comments that kind of need to be answered, like the why, how, what does this mean? If you guys could email them to me ahead of the May Planning Commission meeting, that way I can talk to them, get the answers. And if there's substantial comments, then I can always ask Beth if she would be able to attend, the Planning Commission meeting, to have those. But she did give you guys a red line version so you can see exactly what's being changed. And I tried to give you just kind of a brief summary. Several of the articles are just minor modifications, definitions, and slight changes to make it consistent with things that are now in the new zoning ordinance that was adopted a few years back. But then there is substantial changes to section 625 for open space and recreational requirements, and the traffic study requirements.
So all the things that are crossed out here is that what they're trying to eliminate?
Anything that's strike through is eliminated.
Or are they gonna have a table of, like,
I don't, from when I looked over this and reviewed it, I did not see a table like that for like number of basketball courts and top lots and things like that. The way I read it through, it seemed like the focus was really on getting parkland dedicated. It seemed kind of a little open to discretion on what features needed to be provided.
so they are thinking that anytime a developer comes in, they're no longer gonna require rec facilities, they're gonna require that they donate a certain amount of land to the township?
I think so, and then there's alternatives in there, that if there's not feasible land or things, there's like a certain like financial calculation.
And the township
And choices
understands they're gonna
there.
have to take care of this land and maintain the land and
Yeah, so
for every development that comes in?
for quite a few of them.
Well, I mean, if they're not requiring rec facilities.
Right,
and-
yeah, it seemed to me when I went through that it was a lot more focused on the land aspect than the recreational feature
I don't know.
aspect. So I would gather your comments on that.
Like a re-rate?
Section specifically, sure.
Like a re-rate?
Yeah, I mean,
There's no basis for
Exactly.
where to start. It's just, if Steve put this together,
Well, that explains it.
that we can't go forward with this. And the other thing I recommend to the supervisors, that once we get it to the point where we're all happy with it, recommend it to them, they may wanna let the community see it as well, because the way I see this, with plan, at least one of the plans that's in front of us, this is gonna be beneficial to them, because unless
Well,
they're
they've
vested.
they're vested in the old ordinances, so their
We
plan
still
would be
have, we
covered.
still have that basis then.
Okay, it wouldn't be beneficial to any of them coming,
New ones.
yeah.
But going forward, though, the way I read this is that all of this is gone.
Correct.
They're going to be requiring that they give land to the township, but then I'm thinking of Public Works. Does Public Works have time right now to go out and mow all these potential parks with all this land that we have? Like, have they
Right.
thought this through? Because that's extremely costly. And that means that roads aren't gonna get fixed and other things aren't gonna done, because the grass is gonna have to be mowed in all these places, all these parks, every week, maybe twice a week, three, it depends on if we get rain. I mean, like, have they really thought this through? Because this is very expensive. Like, what's the, I'm okay with them, a park here and there possibly, but to take every single development that comes through and they have to donate the land, that means us taxpayers are gonna have to pay to take care of all this. And I'm just, that's,
You're not requiring any rec facilities?
no, because it would be a park, which
It's
the
just-
township
I'm
now
saying, so
owns.
now the
Yeah,
township is taking the
I
burden.
didn't see clear provisions in there that said, you know,
There's
you
not.
need to.
There's not in there.
Right, I didn't see it, that says, you know, within this land, you need to buy a hot lot and a basketball court. I didn't read it.
Right, so
I
they
see
could
what it says.
acquire the land and not do anything with it and just say it's park?
I'm not even sure it's consistent with the comp plan.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't get a chance to compare it to the comp plan. There needs to be flexibility, because every situation in a development is different. You know, so this to me doesn't look like it provides it, other than the land is gonna be dedicated to the township.
Well,
And
but then
some
if you,
communities, that may not be a good idea.
but then if you go back, if you go further, it says ownership of the open space and facilities. It talks about a homeowners association. So I'm confused by how they
Yeah,
have
they're
this set
given,
up.
there seems to be, and there was a kind of other scenarios that if there wasn't land available to donate, then, like, whatever would have been required to be donated or set aside for open space, you know, determine like the value of it, and then that value needs to be provided in rec facilities.
But then I didn't see anything showing what facilities would be put on there though.
Right.
They got rid of all that. So how can
Correct.
they require rec facilities if they don't have the
Like,
facilities? in
yeah,
place?
it seemed to be very generalized, and not a lot of specific guidance on these are the types of facilities we wanted, or exactly, you know, who would be determining and approving, you know, which ones, you know.
I also think
So-
that there should be some requirement, if they're doing an open space option, that they can take part of that open space and apply impervious coverage to these tiny little postage stamp lots that they keep coming up with. I mean, if you're gonna redo this ordinance, now's the time to put that, something like that in there, that requires them to add maybe 500. I mean, there's no reason why they can't take the open space and use that as impervious towards the lots that are in that development. Because basically what they're doing now is, there's all this open space, yet you have a tiny little lot, you can't do anything on it. And
There's
It needs-
a requirement in here that's, they're to dedicate 1,500 square feet of land for every well. No, it doesn't necessarily say that. It says that they have to set aside land or dedicate land to the township.
Right, but
Doesn't
the
say it has to be a
township
park.
owns it, well, what's the?
Township would
Why
just
would
have-
benefit, why would the township want to acquire land to just?
That they have to pay to maintain.
Right.
Right,
That
exactly.
doesn't serve anybody in the community if it's not a park, it's just sitting there. I don't see how that's beneficial.
Yeah, so it's a
I
little unclear. It's like Gary said, it says 1,500 square foot, you know, dedicate that, and then the next thing talks about minimum standards for land for dedication as a public park, and sets minimal areas. So you have to have a certain number of lots of dwellings to even get up to that minimum area. So what those other little pockets are, you know, so I think it says minimum area for a park should be a minimum of 2 contiguous acres. So that's an awful lot of 1,500 square foot pockets, you know, before you're up to 2 acres. So,
I don't know if the supervisors have read this. My guess is that they put it together and sent it out to us first, and
yeah, because that's almost 58 houses would have to provide 1,500 square feet to get up to 2 acres. So,
I think what they need to hear is that we're not sold on the rec and open space changes.
and we can pass that initial comment
And
along with
have
that.
some discussion.
You guys feel like there may be significant discussion needed and possible revisions on the open space section, just to begin with, to put them on notice that that would definitely be coming. And will be further discussion at your May meeting.
Well, we should read through it and put our comments together and send it into,
Yeah, so if you get like at least a week ahead of the meeting, that way I can try and have, you know, Beth or whoever has a little more knowledge of the development of these open space regulations to try and answer some of your questions about, you know, who, what, why, where, when.
How
What does
far
this
was this
really
along
mean?
before Steve left?
excuse me?
How much of this was written before Steve left? If he
I have no idea.
I think most of, it's my understanding most of the open space things came from him. But in exactly what form they were in, I'm not sure. Beth ultimately kind of compiled the revisions.
Yeah, it's just, there's like dumb stuff in here, like, there's streetlights shall be installed for every development. I'm not sure that's a requirement that we should put in for every development. You know, there's a push for dark skies. They're specific to the type of curb. They only want roll curb. You have to get special approval to do standing curb. And I'm not sure. Sidewalks, there's lots of stuff in here that I don't understand why they made the changes. Well, you mean the same one that we're gonna spend $5 million on the
Yes.
little park that's right next to the road?
Yes.
Okay.
And as a roll curve comes from the roadmaster's preference.
And I can't figure that out because the first time that you throw an overlay on, you got a mill. So if you put a slant or a standing curb, you can at least get one overlay in without spending all the money to mill all the edges. I know, I've had that discussion with
Yes.
him.
So-
All right. The traffic, I think that the information in the traffic study is a lot more, I think it's a lot better because it covers a lot of items that were otherwise weren't covered, and I think it helps the township to get a comprehensive.
Yeah, it gives them very specific direction I think the previous traffic study stuff was do a traffic study, didn't really have a lot of criteria and standards for which they were supposed to evaluate things.
They don't, this is almost a new section, because there's nothing stricken. They just strike anything out. There's 612, 612.
Well, it's just a very basic. I have.
Yeah, the only thing that was struck, there was very little in.
The applicant for.
But I do think that's an improvement.
I think, look at your existing Saldo, or it's on the website. I think the problem is that the strike through carries through all the new sections. So, if you see the strike throughs within subsection A, B, etc., and follow them, it would make a whole sentence. So, like the applicant for any, and then it jumps here, subdivision, or, and then it comes down to land development, staying proposed to contain 20 dwelling units, for, so that didn't get struck as a whole paragraph through there. So you may just want to look at the existing Saldo language to capture what the original gist of that was.
Take a good look at it, send your comments in. Be nice if they could be in by the 10th. And then that's their next meeting. Or would they want it by workshop?
I think, I don't know that they're going to do much with it before they get your comprehensive comments, probably after your May meeting, and then have a full discussion, for a June workshop, more than piecemeal discussions, but I can give them a heads up that there's
So
discussion to come.
our recommendation with changes at our May meeting would be for them to take action whenever they feel like it, whenever they want, right? In June or July.
Right, I think it would, then your comments in your May meeting would be passed on to them for their discussion in June to decide, if things should be changed based upon your comments, and how they will move forward.
So speaking of open space and facilities and all that, so it was confusing reading this because I couldn't really tell exactly where they were going with this. It looked like to me they were getting rid of all that. But in the event that they're not, I think that when a developer comes in and, I understand that there's phases and that things change during the phases, but I think when they present a plan, period, whether it's phased or not, when they come in with a plan for a development, they should say what facilities they have and what they're doing, and those are the facilities they should put in. Then being able to pay a fee in lieu of a phase 2 or phase 3, when people buy into open space development, a lot of times because of the amenities that they have. And then the next thing you know, they're told there's going to be a tennis court, and then it's, oh no, we're paying a fee in lieu of that, we don't have to have that. Oh yeah, we're not, that's just not, that's not right. They should, whatever facilities are going to be in, and I don't care whether it's phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, I don't care what it is, whatever facilities need to be put in is what should be put in. And if they want to pay a fee in lieu, they should do it before the development starts. We should know what facilities are paying a fee in lieu, so that when people buy in phase 1, and no, we don't have to do the tennis courts in phase 3, and then they pay a fee in lieu and it never shows up.
Right.
That's just not right.
Okay.
So when the preliminary plan is approved, the preliminary plan is going to show the entire community and the phases. That's the time when
That's right.
all that should be on there.
On that
And
plan
there should be,
a permanent price.
there should be a note on there that they can't be.
Right, so if they want to
Final
pay a fee in
phase,
lieu,
final
fine,
plans.
but then pay at that point before the development starts, so when somebody buys in, you already know that, oh yeah, they're not putting the tennis court in because they paid a fee in lieu for that.
Got it.
Just for those of you in the audience, most of the changes are grammar changes, spelling changes, reference to the joint comp plan, reference to
They added a lot of definitions.
the two, yeah, they did, there's some
I think a lot
definitions.
of the definitions are related to the traffic study,
Yeah. I saw
components,
some,
and then,
like sewer, there was a lot of things that also helped sewer.
yeah, I think a few, there's a lot to make things, there are certain things that are now in the zoning ordinance that could be kind of bumped or changed from the Saldo, or they had old references to section numbers, things like that. So it was made consistent with the zoning ordinance requirements as well. But like we said, the big changes were to the traffic study requirements and the open space and recreational requirements. They're increasing the submission deadline to give more time for reviews.
I'm sure you don't want us to not support that,
Please do
right?
not change that. Desperately, please.
The
I mean,
draft,
because really that gives hopefully an opportunity for you guys to get review letters sooner. You know, not a day or two before the meeting, so it's the ultimate goal.
so the traffic looks good, that looks like that was needed, it's just the open space and the park and all that,
I
that
didn't
really needs some
understand.
scrutiny
Yeah, I was
on our parts of what we can recommend to them, as far as what we would like to see. So, should we even bother sending our comments to the supervisors before our next meeting, or should we send them in, I guess, for clarification before we?
Yeah, I think the only thing I was planning on mentioning, passing on to the township and the supervisors was that there was,
Confusion.
some confusion over the full intent of 625, and that you guys will likely have significant comments on that and the types of open space facilities, rec facilities, and, kind of what should be provided for the development, just so they have an expectation that you guys aren't just gonna give that a check and go. So just kind of give them a heads up on that, and then let them know that you guys are gonna have further discussion at your May meeting. And like I said, if you guys have kind of more of those interpretation, like, I don't get this, what they're trying to say, and try and let me know ahead of time so I can try and get feedback from Beth and whoever else on exactly where their intentions are.
When the supervisors determine that the plan does not contain, I don't know what page it is. It's 3B.
Okay.
Doesn't contain suitable or sufficient land for dedication and shall require that a fee in lieu of dedication shall be required, and as described in this section. So that, I don't like the word that it's shall. The supervisors, and also maybe the planning commission, should be able to determine that they have to provide it and give up the land rather than get their units. Get the number of lots and then just do a fee in lieu of. That's the discretion piece that I think isn't included here throughout this. It should be the supervisor's call whether.
For everyone, regardless of whether.
Yeah, and it's like,
Even
okay,
if it's a big development, but if it's down in one little corner, far corner of the township, you may not want something down there, and you'd rather have fee in lieu to do something more centrally located. Is that what you're?
well, I'm just saying that because they're all different, there should be some discretion, and it should be worded that that's the only option.
Right.
Maybe it should be developed. Maybe they're squeezing something in they shouldn't do.
Okay.
What about this right here? Fair review. The township's planning commission shall consider input from the township rec and parks board and recommendations contained in the comprehensive plan. I mean, don't they just present what they feel and
Well, we asked for for that, and
Yeah,
we'll
we
have that
did.
joint meeting, and to my knowledge,
didn't
nothing
release
ever
it.
was
Right.
provided.
Right.
So we've complied with that, they haven't. You're suggesting that that should be removed, right?
No, I'm just saying, I just,
That their input is needed.
sure, but, will we get their input before we're looking at a plan? You know what I'm saying? Like, are they giving input prior to us reviewing the plan for development?
So kind of at what stage are they?
Yeah,
doing
when are they
it?
doing that?
Yeah,
I mean, we should want their input.
right.
Yeah, but when do we get it? Like, we've never had their, you know, what,
Mm-hmm.
not by our account,
Right.
you know, we've asked for input.
Well,
So, right, same thing, is it
sketch-
like,
sketch
does
and
the copy of the plan
Right.
get sent to the
Right.
park and rec upon submission for them to
Right.
look at and provide comments?
Right.
I didn't see that in here in plan
It's
submission.
No, but
It's
I'm
right
thinking
there.
that's what
No,
she,
that's in part.
No,
That's
it's.
in 625. Doesn't say that it gets, a copy of the plan gets sent. to them.
right,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
to accomplish that, you know, something would need to be added to address Melissa's
I'm just saying that
comment
we've
about that,
asked
and that's a
before.
possible, you know, is the solution to have a copy sent to them upon submission, or does it go through
Why
down?
couldn't we add that? Why can't we send it to them? And if they choose not to do anything with it, that's fine.
Well,
But
that's what I'm trying to say, like, we want to cover ourselves, like,
Right.
I don't want to have it just hanging out there that we should look at it, but what's the appropriate, you know, process that we're gonna know what they're,
Right, so I would put that in your comments, that, you know, when and how is the Park and Rec providing comments, you know, dash, dash, do they get a copy of the submission upon receipt, or, you know, something like that. Because you do want you'd want it early, then.
well, I'm thinking, what, we should have their comments before we're reviewing the plan and talking about it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, that makes sense.
So we should suggest that they add, the Park and Rec receives a plan, either a sketch or preliminary submission.
But that we at least can review their comments as we're coming to review, when we're
Right.
reviewing the plan, we should have their comments prior to us reviewing the plan in a meeting like this.
Right. You don't
Because
wanna
then we've
send
already
things-
talked about
right,
stuff and we have no idea what their ideas were.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so read through it, send your questions or comments, and be prepared to deal with this at the May meeting.
If you do get them to me like a week ahead, then I can try and compile everybody's comments into one thing and kick it back out to you guys. You know, so Aaron would have an idea of what Troy was thinking, and that way,
Yeah.
you know, gives you a chance to see everybody else's comments, to have a more fruitful discussion at the meeting, instead of hearing
Send
things for the
all
first
the
time.
pages that I have.
If you want to redline your thing
kidding.
and scan it in and send it back to me, that's fine.
How,
No, listen.
how often does the saldo get reviewed and changed? On like what's works?
Not very often, usually, you know, if we see things, we'll keep kind of a running list. And then, I mean, you guys adopted the zoning ordinance, what, 17 or 18?
But we went through that for 2 years.
Yeah, so-
we got there.
Right, so it's been 5 years since that got adopted, so I don't think we've done, I'm not sure the last time you guys did a comprehensive Saldo amendment. So I think it's only if something really substantial
Yeah, it's-
came up with the need to immediately revise it. But,
When they do the comp plan. What's a comp plan date?
15 and 78.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, usually, I mean, if there's minor things like we wanted to
There was
change
some
this
salad
issue,
stuff, but
like,
it was mostly zoning.
It was
Yeah.
mostly the zoning code was pretty much.
yeah, that was all redone, and then I think the salad was just kind of held out for a while to make it consistent with zoning, and then Yeah.
We need to think about starting that process again
the
every
comp
10
plan.
years.
Oh, okay, yeah. But we joint the plans with our
with that being said, Aaron, if you guys look at other sections of the Saldo that aren't changing, that you think there's something a little, wonky on, or there's things that we continually, see waiver requests or, interpretations or things on, that should be changed, it's a good time to call that out too. So you don't just have to focus on what's proposed to be changed. If you're reading through it and, you see other things that are wrong, even if they're like spelling errors, or, references that just seem wrong, sometimes things just get mixed. So there's some of those cleanups in there, but it's good if people that don't read this every day read it, because, if you're very familiar with something, you read what you think it says.
Right.
And, so do look at it from that perspective also.
Okay, we all understand what our task is for the next month? I read it all, it's fun to read.
I don't know, I read the most, I didn't read this one. I got stuck in open space,
Yeah.
that's where I.
Yeah, took me a while to get through there.
It's not very clean the way it's written. It's very,
Right. So,
just organized. Okay. Now we're going to, at open forums, or anybody has any comments? Yes, sir.
Charles Town, 49 Westbrook Lane. You guys are saying about what they do the plan with, if they say the park goes in it, then that should be all the way through, but then you just had Ryan started the development, put a certain type of house in, and then they come in and get a variance and do something totally different. Isn't that the same? If you're purchasing a house, and then they change the way the development's getting built?
So you're referring to the setback?
Yeah, so that they would change the models that they're building.
For what it's worth, we recommended not doing that.
I know, I'm just saying, but it's the same thing. You guys can recommend that they
That's
traffic
right.
code.
We are not the decision-making body.
I know, but I'm saying,
But
if
the
you guys
difference
recommend
is-
that they have to go through with the tennis court because it was in phase one, how's that any different?
But because what you're talking about is a zoning issue, and this is subdivision and land, which is different.
It would be a note on their plan that they would be held to. It would be a condition of plan approval.
for the recreation changes,
Yeah.
you're saying.
Okay. I just don't see how it's any different, that's all.
The difference is if they asked for a variance because they couldn't meet the zoning requirement, their facilities wouldn't be a zoning requirement, it's a subdivision. and
I
land
understand that, I'm saying you're purchasing a house thinking that the neighborhood's gonna be one way, then they change it, and then get a variance to build a different style house altogether.
Which is why we're saying that whatever facilities they want to put in needs to be done at the beginning of the plan.
I agree with you.
Right.
I'm just
He's
saying,
saying, but
how is it
the
any
layout
different
and
if you
stuff
can change
changes.
the type of development you're putting in?
I mean, if they do go for zoning changes, anybody that's in there already does get notified, but, it's the same type of concern, so. But,
That's all.
okay.
Anyone else? Okay. There's nobody on Zoom, so
No.
we can adjourn the meeting, and that's what the choice of the commission is. So if that's the case, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned. 7:54.